Hey guys, before we jump into this episode, just wanted to let you know this is a spoiler-filled episode, the entire episode. We usually do spoiler-free sections and then spoiler sections. Not this one. No, no. So, be warned. Stay nice. He's just a boy raised by two farmers who had a solid moral compass. So of course he's going to be a dork. Of course he's going to be way too sensitive to the monkey chatbots run by an egomaniac tech billionaire. Of course he's going to believe that humans are not only worth saving, but that humanity is something we should aspire to. And in a world that has veered the exact opposite direction, what's more punk rock than that? It's not a bird, it's not a plane, this is Superman.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to start here. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're here talking about Superman.
In what sense can we not believe it?
Just this movie, we've been hearing about it for the past 3 years, and it always felt like, man, we're going to get like a James Gunn Superman movie, and it's just going to be a new Superman. It's going to be called straight up just Superman, and it's going to be this like tone that I have been wanting for such a long time, and I just can't believe we're here.
I know. I've been looking forward to this movie too for a while. I think you and I have had our own discourse. I mean, just to kind of jump right into it, to be clear for people, we are not fans of the Zack Snyder era of DC movies. I mean, there's some that are good, of course, but in general, we're just not fans. We're not going to spend this whole time comparing, contrasting, and shitting on it either, but we just want to make it clear. We were very eager for this one to come out. And it is, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, it is cool to finally be able to say that we've seen it. Altaf and I have not spoken about it the entire time. We've seen it probably like a good week ago or so now, or like maybe a little less than a week. But we both kind of bit our tongues and we're like, okay, cool. We saw Superman. We're going to talk about it today. And this is what we're doing now.
To be clear, Chris has been the one that it's like, dude, I'm not going to talk about it with you. We got to have some restraint here. And to Chris's credit, like if it wasn't for him, I'd be like yapping my mouth before the podcast. So I do think like I'm really excited to talk about it. Before we get into that, welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to talk about Superman.
And we do have a Patreon, guys, for those who like the show and want to support us. You can go to patreon.com/Movies That Changed Us, where you can get exclusive bonus episodes and you also get early access. And our current bonus show that we're doing is Movies That Played Us, where we play movie-based games that Altaf and I custom make for each other. So we did guess the movie beard, guess the movie tagline, guess the movie weapon. And this go around, after we finish shooting this episode, we're going to record it, our next episode. And I made the game for Altaf this time, and it's going to be guess the movie vehicle.
Hell yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that.
It's going to be an assortment of vehicles, including, it's going to be cars and other types too, as you would imagine.
Okay, cool. Well, head over to our Patreon at Movies That Changed Us if you want to check that out. So, there's probably people listening to this or watching this that are new here. Maybe they just were looking for Superman reviews and they came across our podcast. And to those people, I say welcome. And also, before we start talking about the movie, each episode of this podcast, we kind of share with each other from this past week, what's a piece of art that moved us. And this could be anything from movie, TV show, to song, to book, to piece of architecture, to land. If we traveled somewhere and we're like, look at this national park, we could say that. But it's usually movies and TV shows. So Chris, I'll start with you. What's a piece of art that moved you this week?
Well, it's been a good couple weeks since we've recorded last. So I told you about some of it already. So I'll kind of give an abridged version of each of them. I saw Megan 2.0. Decent movie. It was amusing. I have not seen the first one yet, and I know everyone's going to tell me, like, watch the first one because I hear the second one's completely different. I'm going to watch the first one, and I still really want to see it, and I've heard great things about it. But I watched the second one and thought it was fun. It was amusing. I saw Jurassic World Rebirth. I keep forgetting the title of it because Rebirth is literally useless to the plot, but it is called Jurassic World Rebirth.
Oh yeah, I was about to say weird because the title is like really relevant to what the story is, man.
In a bridge version of my thoughts, I thought it sucked ass. There you go. I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, and to be clear, Chris already told me this stuff, so I'm not reacting to it. So I'm actually just ready for him to get through with the Megan 2.0 Jurassic World stuff so I can hear what else he talked about.
And then this one you know about as well, Altaf, but I started reading The Shining because I am kind of dabbling a little bit in voice work just to try it out, just for fun. So I am practicing reading The Shining out loud and recording myself doing it.
But are you actually reading it, or are you just using it as a practice?
What do you mean? Yeah, I'm reading it as opposed to what?
Like, are you just reading chapters to record yourself, or are you actually taking in the story?
I mean, kind of both. I kind of have to take in the story in order to read it out loud.
I don't think that counts.
Why do you, dude, how often in this show do you gatekeep and say that moved you? That doesn't, like, how does that not count, me reading an audiobook out loud?
You're just using it as like I'm just trying to practice my voice work. You're not really consuming the art for the sake of it.
How could you say that though? Because I have to read and understand the words out loud when I read it. What are you talking about?
I don't know, man. Hey, to the people who are listening and watching, comment down below if you think Chris is a hack.
Also, funny enough, like I said, I am interested in attempting audiobooks or something in the future. Anyone listening right now that does listen to audiobooks regularly and is familiar with the show and stuff, let me know what genre you think my voice lends itself to. I'm genuinely just curious, just because I'm super green in this territory and I just want to try it out.
So, I watched Lawrence of Arabia in 70mm for the first time. A movie I had already seen, but for people who don't know, in LA once a year, the Cinematheque, which is a film collective community, I don't know what to call it, but they do a 70mm film festival every year in the summer in LA. So it usually goes from July to August. Tickets sell out so quick, but to give people a sense of like what kind of movies they show in 70mm, this year they're showing Boogie Nights, Nope, Total Recall, Die Hard, and then they're also showing Spaceballs in 70mm, which I thought is amazing. But Lawrence of Arabia is the one I like. It's a bucket list thing to want to see that movie on the big screen. I saw it for the first time 2 years ago on my iMac on HBO Max, and like I loved it, but I was also like, I shouldn't see it this way. And yeah, I saw it in theaters, man. There's not that many words to describe what that's like, because there's not many movies like Lawrence of Arabia where after the 4 hours are done, because it's a long movie, you genuinely feel at a loss when you walk out, because you're just like, no, I was there for 4. That was like my life. I was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you just like, what do you mean I'm just supposed to go get tacos now? What the fuck? What is that? Because it immerses you in that sense, because man, there's some, obviously people have heard about the cinematography of Lawrence of Arabia. It's insane I don't even know how they survived shooting that movie. But on top of that, something I realized watching it in theaters was how funny it is, and like how deeply emotionally moving it is. And I didn't realize that the first time I watched it, because the first time I watched it was so overwhelmed by the visuals. And I felt like I actually connected to the character of Lawrence, as weird and as unique as he is. And I was emotionally invested in the story too, which was really cool.
That's awesome. I haven't seen that movie since I was probably 13 years old, and I don't remember it at all. So I always kind of consider it as a movie that I really technically haven't seen because I don't remember. But it's funny though how much that movie has rippled into like every other movie. Like I always hear comparisons to Lawrence of Arabia, even down to, Dune. I remember Spike Lee talked about it when he made Do the Right Thing, how he said that movie made him want to get a glass of water, and he wanted to achieve that effect when he made Do the Right Thing. It's just crazy how highly influential that movie is. It's a movie I need to watch too, but it's super cool you got to see it in theaters, because that is like probably the optimal way to experience it, I would imagine.
There's a scene where like Lawrence gets a glass of lemonade, and it's just like, like you could hear the audience kind of like sigh in relief. Like you were like, oh my God. Chris, like you said earlier in this episode, we've been shutting our traps about this movie. I've been trying to share inklings of my thoughts, and you've been like, we're not talking about it. Wisely said. What did you think of Superman?
I really, 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 really liked it. I think it's not 100% perfect in terms of story structure. I think it's a little messy at times, but it very much captured this really new and refreshing tone of Superman, and it very unapologetically leaned into the weirdness and the not taking himself so seriously aspect of Superman, of like kind of the dorky nature of him. And I was really, really happy with it when it was, when it was finished.
Yeah, did you see it? You saw it in IMAX. You saw it with. Did you see it with a big group or?
Yeah, it was a really packed theater. IMAX kind of overrated. I went.
Wow.
Maybe this particular theater, but I went and sat down. It was filled to the brim, so it was like a long line for everything. This is like a full packed theater thing, and it was fun. But yeah, the screen wasn't quite as big as I remember it feeling. The seats weren't reclining. and I was still too expensive tickets, and I had to drive like 20 minutes out to it.
Well, see, that is kind of the advantage of living in LA, and sometimes I do forget that, having lived here for so long, that like watching a movie in IMAX in LA is so much easier. There's many more screens that are closer to you. The theaters are actually, because it's Los Angeles, it's like built for like an IMAX screen, so it does feel kind of like grand. Like you and I saw Oppenheimer in IMAX together, and that felt like a proper.
That was cool.
Yeah. But
yeah,
you're also not like you're also not a big like, I need to see it in the biggest screen possible. You're not chasing after an IMAX screen.
Not instinctively, no. You talked me into it unintentionally. You asked me if I was going to see an IMAX, and I was like, no, and kind of joking. And then later I was like, maybe I should see an IMAX, and I decided to do it. And then I went, to it, and I was like, oh, I kind of would rather see this at a normal theater.
Wow.
And I'm embarrassed because I don't want to be like super cynical. I don't want to be that guy. Because like when I lived in LA, I loved going to the Dolby screen. That was like the good middle ground, in my opinion, where it was like still like a solid screen with recliners, but the sound was like, bolstered.
So wait, I'm curious, what don't you like about the IMAX screen?
Like I said, I think it just wasn't worth the extra price, and like for the size of the screen didn't seem worth it to me.
The
Maybe
hassle.
I'm just desensitized. Yeah.
Well, I wonder, like, because what do you think of the AMC, like the one in LA? Like, do you think that IMAX screen is worth it?
I think IMAX is still really good, but you have to get really good seats for it. Like, I'd rather...
Yes, I agree.
Because my seats weren't bad seats, but they weren't like in the middle, like perfectly. They were a little scooted forward. Again, it wasn't right at the front, but it was like more towards the front, and it makes a dramatic difference, And I kind of miss just going to a normal theater where you don't have to sit in these perfectly framed seats.
I'm going to share my thoughts on the movie in a second, but just to wrap this IMAX conversation in a bow real quick, I believe that if a movie is intentionally shot in IMAX, like if it's shot with IMAX cameras, and it's a movie that I'm looking forward to, then I'll cough up the extra money. If it's not shot on IMAX and it's still screening in that format, I'm like, there's no reason for this. Like, it's too expensive. I don't give a shit about maybe it's a slightly bigger screen. If it's not shot in that format, then I don't think it's worth it. Maybe if I still want to see in premium or whatever, then I'll do Dolby. But like Top Gun Maverick, there's no way to see that besides IMAX, in my opinion. Like, that is like a full-on immersive experience. But yeah, anyways, we can wrap that up there. Well, I'm sorry for pushing you to pay extra money for it. Like, I feel bad.
You literally did not push me. To be clear, you literally asked me if I was seeing it in IMAX. You didn't tell me to see it in IMAX. You just asked me if I was, and I first told you no, and then I just decided to later because I was like, you planted that seed.
Yeah,
this is not.
Chris said no, fucking loser, and then he like took my lunch money.
Yeah, that's the energy. Yeah, took your idea.
Okay, well, it's not to be boring, but I have the same exact opinion as you, where I'm like, I really liked it. I came out and I was like, oh, no harm, no foul. It felt like this movie didn't really like hurt anything. But I also like, there are things that just straight up don't work for me. And I'm going to talk about that towards the end of the podcast, because I would like to front load this with what really did work for me.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, for sure.
For sure. But there are things that are like undeniable where I'm like, oh man, this stuff, oh brother, okay. But the biggest thing that really stood out to me, and I think we can start here, is the general theme of this movie, which is, I wrote it down, sincerity is punk rock. And like that's the thing that like there's a conversation between Lois and Clark that is about that, about Lois kind of making fun of Clark for liking lame music. She's like, no, that's not punk rock. I listen to punk rock. And Clark gets kind of butthurt about that, but then he has that whole, and Lois is talking about how like, no, it's about going against the grain. You trust everyone. You trust everyone. You want to trust everyone. You believe in the best of people. And then Clark is like, well, maybe that's the most punk rock of all. And I remember when I saw that in the theaters, people kind of laughed because it is a silly line, but it's also like that he really believes that. And part of that is like David Corenswet's performance, but then the rest of the movie is like kind of supporting that argument, which is like in a world that's, like I said in my synopsis, in a world that's gotten very cynical and very meta and very like, mocking about the idea of valuing humanity and valuing sincerity. If you are someone that does have hope and is filled with hope, you kind of are like you're part of a movement. You are kind of punk rock in that way. What did you think of that theme?
Yeah, 100%. I think that was definitely the most moving scene to me too. I think especially like, seeing like every move he makes is under a microscope by society. Where like, and that is kind of how it is for a lot of celebrities and politicians, influencers, the whole deal. I'm not going to put politicians and influencers on the same pedestal, to be clear, but you know what I'm saying, that, big, important people are hyper looked at. The minute they say a statement in an interview that people don't like, everyone shares it and shits on him and creates this whole caricature of who they might be. And so I think when Superman's just trying to create a blanket, ideology of, human life is good and should be protected. When he stopped that invasion and, the between those two fictional countries, he just had the most simple belief of just people were going to die, so I'm going to stop doing it. Or, I'm going to stop it from happening. He didn't have any other ulterior motives behind it politically. He just didn't want more people to die. And
well, that's why I love that scene, that interview scene where Lois is interviewing Clark, and Clark is getting mad, like he's getting upset. Because he's like, the people were gonna die. Like, that's the thing he says when he yells. And Lois is like, it's more complicated than that in this world. And for him, it's like, he just like was raised in a way that was very simple. And that idea is being challenged. And I kind of like the kind of push and pull of that.
Yeah. And, just to kind of contextualize for both of us, Superman is not a character that is like super near and dear and important to me. I've always liked Superman growing up. Spider-Man's really my character that's emotionally important.
I'm glad you're bringing it up because I forgot to ask you that. I was like, what was your relationship with Superman growing up?
I did see the Christopher Reeves movie growing up, and I recently rewatched it a couple months ago, kind of in anticipation for this one, funny enough. But what was it? I did not like the Zack Snyder version. I didn't, there were things of Zack Snyder's interpretation that are actually kind of cool, I will say. Some stuff of like the mystique from other people's perspectives of how powerful Superman is, I always thought was cool. Those certain moments when like Flash is running and he sees Superman following him and he's like terrified.
Yeah, you're talking about like small moments.
But just the overall mystique of Superman, like I said, when Batman's doing that car chase, which again, not a good context, but when Superman stops the car chase, how you see that slow-mo moment of Batman seeing Superman and just being like genuinely taken aback by his presence. I like that stuff, but the overall like, spirit of Superman just was not there. But, yeah, I mean, so it was really nice to see this one where they gave Superman almost like a Mickey Mouse effect where like kids are just excited to see him. He's like this beacon of like, almost like how we imagine kids would react, like I said, if they saw Mickey Mouse or like Ronald McDonald or certain like kid icons, where they're just like, oh my God, it's Superman. I always like that.
Yeah, no, totally. I think really quickly to talk about how I grew up with Superman. So I've never seen the Christopher Reeve movie. I never really grew up with the movies. I saw Superman Returns, the Bryan Singer one. And I saw it like one time, so it didn't really have an impact on me. But I did watch Smallville. So when I was
I forgot you watched Smallville.
When I was in high school, Smallville was already on its 10th season, so like its last season. And me and a friend of mine just like caught up. Like we binged it. And I was a huge Smallville fan. I mean, and there's obviously a lot of like CW-ness of it all, where it's like 20 episode, 40-minute seasons that are very like cheesy and very corny. But Tom Welling as Clark Kent was my Clark Kent. Like, he was the guy I grew up with, you know? And I still think of Superman in that context. Like, when I think of Lex Luthor, I compare Lex Luthor to Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor, who I still think was fantastic as Lex Luthor. So that's just how I know about Superman and Superman lore. And then I saw Man of Steel, and the same I have the kind of same thoughts as you, so I don't want to just regurgitate it. One shout out to Man of Steel that I'll give is like the only scene that I really like in that movie is his first flight scene. I think it's so cool. But and I like it, and this is going to be a transition to James Gunn Superman. I like it because it's one of the few moments of real humanity that's in that movie, where like when he's flying, how he kind of can't control the speed of how fast he's flying, so his hands are kind of shaking, which is and then he like starts laughing and smiling because it's like exciting to him that he's doing it. It's the only moment where I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel like you're just trying to make Jesus on screen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm not a huge, I mean, they're cool as like clips, but I'm not as big of a fan of like, look how fast he is, you know what I mean? And so I really connected with how like James Gunn from the opening frame has him like, you know, beaten up.
Yeah, he loses a fight immediately at the start.
Yeah, the opening shot of this movie is him crashing down, and it's a shot we've seen a billion times in the teasers and all the trailer material. And he's bleeding, he's wheezing, and Crypto comes and saves him, but it's like immediately kind of James Gunn being like, this is my Superman. This is a guy, he's a person, you know? And the movie kind of stays loyal to that from front to back. Like, they make a point for him to get beat up in fights all the time. Like, in every single fight, he's getting his ass kicked. And I just thought that was a super interesting choice because, like, you could tell James Gunn is, like, a huge fan. Obviously, James Gunn is a huge comic book fan, but you could tell James Gunn is a huge Superman fan. But he also has some things where he's like, no, I think in order for people to connect with this character, I need to make him human. And I really responded to that. I really like that choice.
Yeah, I mean, like, even in I don't know if you've ever watched the Superman animated series from like the 90s or 2000s and Justice League and all that.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some episodes here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, Superman is not, I mean, he's really powerful. Of course, he's Superman, but he's not like this ungodly, indestructible, whatever. You know what I'm saying? He gets beat up plenty in the show. Don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. You know, if there are any Snyder fans here, I'm just going to say, I know Man of Steel, he gets beat up a lot. That's the whole third act is him getting the shit beat out of him. But the critical difference I will make is the tension in this movie is Superman saving people at the same time. He's trying to redirect, like during that big kaiju scene, he redirects the flames to be up in the air and away from people. You know?
Oh, my favorite moment is when he like saves the kid. Another shot we've seen a billion times in the trailers. But when he saves the kid and it's great. And then he looks up at Guy Gardner and the Justice Gang and he's like, be careful. And I love that. And I love the juxtaposition of like when they show up, they're fighting in the sky and he's now in the ground. Like, and that's like, oh man, like those moments I really, really liked.
And he saves a squirrel.
Oh, dude, that was the best. That was so good. I think me and my friend were talking about that. We were just like, we were both talking about how like we need a moment that's such an old school moment where Superman saves a cat from a tree, and James Gunn did one better, which is like Superman saves a fucking squirrel.
Which is the most James Gunn thing ever, isn't it? Like his love for animals and sneaking that stuff into his movies.
Oh, totally. Of course. Let's touch on Lex for a second. Nicholas Hoult, I always was kind of on board for as Lex Luthor. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's a great choice. I love Nicholas Hoult as an actor. I don't think he's really played a character like this, though. Most of the times he's played like cucks. He's played like very weak guys. You know what I mean? Like just guys that are kind of flimsy and wiry, but there's something under the surface. And this is like, I respect James Gunn for just writing straight up a bad person. Like an evil Lex Luthor. he kills Malik. Malik, a guy that you and I, from the trailer, we loved.
Yeah.
Okay, Malik, to remind people who maybe haven't seen the movie in a minute, Malik is the guy that like yells Superman when Superman comes crashing down and helps him get up, and he's wearing a fanny pack, and you love him immediately.
Yeah.
And Lex, to threaten Superman, just straight up shoots Malik. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. He tries to like Russian roulette with him, and then he shoots him in like the second, time pulling the trigger. And I didn't expect it to go that way. I thought he was going to like just scare him and, whatever. But no, he just straight up murders him in front of him.
My audience gasped too, because there is that feeling, because that shot happens on a wide shot. So you're just like, oh, are we now going to cut to a close up and he like missed on purpose to threaten Superman? I'm like, oh no, he's dead. Like Malik doesn't come back.
Yeah.
I respect that choice. Like in a day where like it feels like in a superhero movie nobody can die, and it was I respected that choice.
Yeah, and he killed him in a pretty brutal way too. And I think overall this version of Lex Luthor was, I think what made him compelling is that they kind of made him a keyboard warrior. Like literally in some ways,
How fucking funny were the monkey chatbots? I died laughing when they my audience fucking died laughing when it was revealed that he has 1 billion monkeys trolling online for him.
And they're like pissed off monkeys too. But but even like when he's fighting Superman, how he's like fighting him through other people. And it's kind of like they use his character as almost like a metaphor, kind of like what I was talking about earlier of like, when people who have influence to some degree, do anything, people pick them apart and put them under a microscope, but they take it all out through their keyboards, through their tweets and through their YouTube comments, through their Instagram comments. And so it's, at least I interpreted it as like, that's the energy that Lex Luthor was giving off, is like, he's a guy who kind of judges people from afar, but doesn't actually, do anything himself.
I was listening to the Big Picture podcast talk about this movie, and something that Sean Fennessy had mentioned, which is just like, do a drinking game out of the amount of times I say that on this podcast. Something that Sean Fennessy had mentioned that I was really interested by is that like, this is pretty personal to James Gunn. Like a few years ago, James Gunn straight up got canceled. He was fired from Marvel for old tweets that resurfaced. And it is interesting that James Gunn made a Superman movie all kind of about cancel culture, as toxic as that phrase even feels like when I say it out loud.
Yeah.
It is a super personal thing to him,
Yeah. And it's interesting because he handles it in a less like middle-aged comedian snarky way. He does it from still kind of a loving place where, he just basically says like, yeah, people are not perfect. I mean, he says it, he summarized that at the very end, right? What Superman says to Lex Luthor when he says like, I'm still a human. I feel things. I put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And I try. And so it's interesting that, like he didn't look at it from like I said, like a cynical, bitter perspective of like, everyone's stupid,
I've been thinking a lot about Lex's like final big monologue that he gives to Superman, when Superman's calling him out as like, you're just filled with envy. That's all you have or whatever. And I like Lex is like, yeah, I'm not dim. Of course envy drives me. And his reason, because you're wondering the entire movie is like, okay, why does Lex hate him so much? Like he hates him so much. It's cartoonish. And Lex says he's just like, you're an alien that comes here that is stronger than we will ever be, and is trying to instill us with qualities that we will never have. And therefore, and you walk amongst us like humans, and therefore, because of you, we will always look weak.
Yeah.
And I can't stand that. And that was a very powerful monologue, not in the sense of like, oh, wow, Lex, I emotionally related to him. But I'm like, that is kind of the world we live in, which is like the people that are the worst in our culture, whether it be our politicians or influencers, the way they, the manosphere shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way I feel like it tapped into something which I believe, which is like, it comes out of a place of insecurity. And that's why like, I think the theme of like being sincere and being hopeful is punk rock, because it's just like this, it's this feeling of like, how fucking dare you be this kind of person that makes me look like an asshole. And the entire movie, Lex is like referring to him as an alien, that he doesn't belong here. And when Superman comes back, he's like, no, I am human. I feel things. I get hurt. I get upset, you know?
Yeah.
And he gives this monologue that feels very corny in a way that I respect, that made my theater like erupt into applause. Like I was like, it was, and I was blown away. I was like, this feels like something that would happen in a Superman cartoon. At the end of the episode where he defeats Lex, he gives this monologue. I'm like, I'm kind of amazed that James Gunn just went for it, you know?
Yeah, it's very Silver Age Superman for sure, And yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, like Lex Luthor, I remember has in the animated series, I saw a clip of him like explaining a similar deal why he hates Superman so much, and he was exercising, he was lifting weights while he was talking and stuff, and he ended up saying something along the lines of like, do you know why we respect human strength so much? Is because it's worked to be earned, you know. Like you have to exercise, you have to do things to take care of yourself to get to points. You have to earn those things. Superman just comes along, and just is the beacon of strength and hope, and did nothing to actually acquire any of that. So he doesn't represent humanity in a way.
That's why I love this Superman. I mean, David Corenswet, we can't say enough. I mean, I loved him as Superman. I loved him as Clark Kent. I'm sure you did too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think he was like, there are certain shots too. He looks like a really interesting like love child of both like, or all three, I would say, like Christopher Reeves, Tom Welling, and Henry Cavill. Kind of like if all of them were like morphed together in Photoshop.
Yeah, 100%. But then I also love how like vulnerable he is. Like the David Cornsworth plays like Clark as this, hurt child from Kansas. Like he really sells it. Like when Lois is like saying all the shit that the Twitter trolls say at him, he does get really upset and butthurt about it. And you believe him, and you're with him and you want him to be okay, which is, to make Superman like that is, I love that, because we've gotten a little used to the statuesque Zack Snyder Superman, who I'm sorry, but it's just like uninteresting. Like is just not an interesting person to like be with. You want someone that has like, doesn't have the sharpest edges.
Yeah, and especially like the biggest criticism I consistently hear about Superman is like, oh, he's cheap, he's boring because he's so powerful. Like I don't care about Superman. That's always the thing I hear about again and again. Which I mean, fair enough, that's your opinion, but I do think this movie made one of the most effort, to show how you can make Superman interesting despite how powerful he is. Like you see the things that he cares about, you see like the stress he's under, the pressure he's under, of like how challenging it really would be to be this, when everyone expects the world of you, to be like the world's most perfect human being, because he's so strong.
Another big part of this movie is there is a message from his OG parents, Jor-El, and I forget his mom's name, which is basically like, we love you, Kal-El. It's a classic message from his parents. But then it's revealed through Lex Luthor's like minions, that there was another half of that message, which was just straight up like, hey man, we just want you to fuck a bunch of women, take as many wives as you need, just take over the human race.
Yeah, lord over everyone.
And literally James Gunn visualizes Superman's purview being changed. Like the lens choices change up and it gets very like wonky, because it's like, who the fuck am I? Like who am I? And I thought that was super interesting, which is like, James Gunn it's no secret, James Gunn's really interested in found family. And he's super interested in what happens when you are not proud of where you come from, but you want to move on. Are you able to? Or are you stuck with your past? Like, or can you move on from it, basically? And that was a really, I thought, bold choice. What did you think of that?
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting. It was very unexpected too, because I don't know about you, but when I saw it, I was expecting it to turn out to be like doctored or edited by Lex Luthor or something like that.
Same, yeah.
And I think a lot of us did, just because it is, as far as I know, I'm not super familiar with the comics and all that stuff at all, but as far as I know, I haven't seen that done before, where the Kryptonians are actually kind of shitheads, and Superman just wasn't that. Usually it's more like, go and protect the people, kind of thing.
Yeah. Russell Crowe coming in and be like, they will look up to you as a symbol or whatever.
Or Marlon Brando, exactly.
Yeah. But
So
yeah. So sorry, continue.
I was just say, I definitely I really like the idea. I do think it was, in my opinion, it was handled a little sloppy. Like, I feel like the world, like Metropolis turned on him really quickly. It was like a little cartoonish. I feel like I've seen that before, at least. Like the lie being spread right in front of everyone and then being like, what? No, that's not true. What is, like, I feel like, I don't know. There was something about it I feel like I've seen before. It wasn't horrible, but it just felt like, okay, this is a little rushed.
Yeah, the movie is definitely short. It's surprisingly short. It's a tight 2 hours, and so it moves things along pretty rapidly. I don't mind that it's attempting to just be a straight 2 hour movie, because in a day and age where like fucking every superhero movie feels like it's almost 3 hours, it's kind of nice to have like a tight movie. But there are moments where I'm like, I wish we stayed here a bit more. So I agree with you. I'm gonna also just say, as like a side tangent, Bradley Cooper took me out of it so hard.
I know we haven't even mentioned it, that straight up Bradley Cooper is Superman's dad.
I got over it. But like the first few minutes, listen, I love a Bradley Cooper cameo. You know I do. I'm not going to spoil the movie where he has a great cameo, but you know what I'm talking about.
I do, yeah.
But this one, I'm just like, this is kind of weird. But it made sense too. I kind of, you know what though? I'll take that back, because I don't recognize the actress who played his mom from Krypton. But both of them feel like Kryptonian gods that would give birth to Superman. The hard contrast to then you see Ma and Pa Kent, who feel like just genuine like farmhands in Kansas. Like it's so
yeah.
So I think you do need someone like Bradley Cooper to be like this blue-eyed god and who looks amazing, and then you get Pa Kent, who's like, oh, that's a guy.
Yeah. That's something that you and I like to say, like, oh, he looks like a guy, whether it's from an actual celebrity or a real, just a guy. But I always appreciated that. Yeah. When you make people look like just real people that are lived in, or that have been living in that environment. Like you said, Ma and Pa can't feel like they've lived on that farm for years.
And we come to the Ma and Pa story, like, when, obviously Clark is at a low point where he doesn't know who he is because of this past, right? And there's that bench scene. I couldn't believe how real that felt, that bench scene, just because the way Pa Kent sits down next to him. And at first, the first few lines are just like, that woman you're with is kind of nice. And he mispronounces Lois Lane. And he's like, anyways, I went over, me and your ma, we went over to this place, the place you liked going to as a kid. Like, it's like, a real parent that, like, is trying to make some small talk before asking his son if they're okay, Like, it just felt so real to me.
I know, and it was interesting because, like, their kid is literally fucking Superman, but they're still kind of like, having these awkward little first interactions to build upon.
No, but that's that's what's so moving about it, though. That's what I loved about it, when Lois has that, like, moment where she's in Clark's bedroom for the first time, and she sees Ma and Pa Kent just, like, right next to him, and is like, we hope our Clark's okay. It's so, like, you want to put your heart out.
Yeah, and she looks around the walls and sees the little trophies and the little pictures and all that too. Just seeing that he did have like a very grounded upbringing, even though everyone looks at him like he's this, look like a god, you know what I mean? But he just had a perfectly wholesome American farmhand upbringing.
And Pa Kent has this quote to him, because obviously Clark is worried about who he is. And he says, your choices, your actions, that's what make you who you are. It's such a like a James Gunn trope, but that is why you love his movies, which is like, no, you get to decide. You don't have to be stuck to your past. You don't have to be stuck to the things that you feel like are the worst parts about you. You can decide. It's about what you do now. I don't know. James Gunn can pull that trick a million times in the rest of his future movies, and I'll still fall for it.
I know. I mean, like, I guess if you want to transition a little bit, James Gunn has certain James Gunn isms, and I think you and I can I feel like this, I'm picking up, you and I can agree where this movie falls short a little bit.
Yeah, it's the parts that Chris and I aren't talking about.
Yeah, where James Gunn can't really help himself a little bit. Don't get me wrong. If we're going to just go straight into it, let's talk about the Justice Gang. I liked the Justice Gang. I just didn't like them in this movie. You know what I mean?
Felt the same way. So you and I both love Nathan Fillion. Every time he had
I made him a sandwich.
Oh yeah, you did. How, like, you want to talk about that? You said he was like he was just being like goofy, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, yeah, he was a super nice guy, a really nice, wholesome dude. But because I worked at a sandwich shop and he was looking between the different options, and I pointed it out, and he was looking closely at the menu, and he made kind of a funny face while he was looking, which isn't like a huge deal, but most actors don't perform at all when they're out in public, just because they kind of stay just pretty chill. But he made like kind of a, I'll do my best. So if you're not on the YouTube version of this podcast, all the more reason to come by. But he did kind of a face like this.
Yeah.
He just made like a little bit of a funny face while he was squinting.
I remember you came home and told me that. This is when you and I were living together. You told me that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he's being so Nathan Fillion." I was so excited. Obviously Nathan Fillion was in Guardians 3, which was so great. So now James Gunn has brought him over and he's become part of the gang, I feel like. And listen, I love him. Every line of dialogue he had in this movie made me laugh. He was really funny. Mm-hmm. But the moment they do show up in that action sequence, I'm like, oh, all right.
In what sense?
It kind of reminded me that, like, oh yeah, James Gunn is like the new Kevin Feige of DC, and he's like starting a universe. Like, oh yeah, in Peacemaker season 2, I saw in the teaser that Guy Gardner shows up. Nathan Fillion's in the opening of the teaser. Oh yeah, they're setting all this up. I forgot. And it kind of, I don't know, it kind of bummed me out a little bit because I was so excited to just see, oh, it's Lex Luthor and it's Superman in Metropolis and it's that's so cool. And then suddenly when they show up, I'm like, all right, it's basically a Marvel movie.
Okay, because I think you and I have different reasons. You can finish your thought, but I have a different reason of criticisms for it.
And then another thing that just did not work for me at all, like when I was in there, I wanted to get out as soon as possible, was the Pocket Universe. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God, not only did it look really ugly to me, but it also, when Superman's in that like neon river holding that baby, the whole time I was just like, why the fuck are we here? Like, it was so much fun when we were in Metropolis and it was broad daylight and it was Lex Luthor being like, 1A, you know what I mean? And it was all that shit. And I'm like, why are we here? And it cuts back to Mr. Terrific. Just to clarify, Mr. Terrific is fucking awesome. But he's really cool. Like, I loved him. But when it cuts back to Mr. Terrific, like, coding with Lois Lane and Lois is like driving that spaceship, I'm like, oh, this is kind of lame. Like, it all felt very like, this is like the other half of James Gunn that sometimes can come where it works at certain points where I'm just like, okay, now you're just being like, you're the comic book nerd that's just adding comic book shit that personally, I'm not that interested in.
Okay. So to unpack that, let's start with just the existence of the Justice Gang, because I didn't have a problem with them because it implied any bigger universe stuff. Because like I've been just not as like, I don't mind if there's a bigger superhero world as long as it doesn't deliberately plant like, ooh, this like some villains brooding in the background kind of thing. I hate that shit. Unless it's like a really big deal.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't think this movie did that. I just do think that like it was so obvious what they were doing, and it got in the way for me a little bit.
Okay, because for me, I interpret it as like, oh, this is like a pre-Justice League kind of like, maybe they'll elaborate on that later, but it's kind of fun because it's a new version of it without just doing like the obvious characters. I interpreted it that way. But the problem that I had, though, was just because the tone was it was too distracting. Like, I feel like it felt too James Gunn being James Gunn. It didn't feel like he was trying to spread his wings and do something new, because Superman, it is very James Gunny, but at the same time, it is still kind of like a new tone and new territory that he's, going into. And I think as soon as the Justice Gang comes in, I'm like, oh, these are Guardians of the Galaxy characters. You know what I mean?
100%. I was so exhausted of the whole, like, Justice Gang, that's not our name, joke. And I'm like, you can't. And then when Anthony Carrigan shows up and at the end he's like, that's a cool name. I'm like, don't do that to me. Don't act like, oh, now that's at the end you end up loving it because he loved it. Like it was such a clear what he was trying to do, like emotional manipulation that I'm like, don't, come on. You didn't earn that. Like, don't do that. I know what you're doing. I've seen enough James Gunn movies. You know better. And I also think he knows better. He's pretty good at balancing that stuff, in my opinion.
Sure. I think but to go off of what you said about the Pocket Universe, I pretty much agree the same way. I think it wasn't really that inspired. I'm like down for the idea of like having his own fucked up prison where, I like some of the stuff of like he has like crazy ex-girlfriends in there
and the
like,
allegory,
people that opposed him.
The metaphor was pretty clear of like James Gunn has talked openly a lot, maybe to his chagrin of just being like Superman's an immigrant,
Yeah.
And that's gotten some controversy. And I mean, like that stuff, putting them, Lex Luthor being hired out by the government to have his private prison in the Pocket Universe, and they're kept in these glass boxes, feels very much of like what,
it's pretty political.
Feels like what happens in Gitmo or like what ICE does and shit like that. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But going off of like just the basic like atmosphere, like you said, I agree. I thought it looked very like dark and ugly, and like the river scene just wasn't really that compelling. And also like when Mr. Terrific and Lois come into the scene, they didn't really contribute anything to the scene. They're kind of just standing there watching. Like Mr. Terrific's camera's there, but he doesn't like contribute anything to the moment. They're all just kind of watching it happen. And it just felt very like, oh, this doesn't need to be there.
And I love Lois in this movie. I love like,
yes.
I think she's really solid. Rachel Brosnahan is fucking great. I know you haven't seen her in much stuff, but like when her casting was announced, it made like so much sense. And I think it's a very obvious thing of when Mr. Terrific and her show up there. It's like a thing where like we need to have her to do something. Mm-hmm. So like we need to give her something to do as a character. We can't just have her at the Daily Planet the entire time.
Yeah.
So
at least she doesn't, take the kryptonite spear and throw it in a body of water and then jump back in to get it and almost drown.
Yeah. At least she didn't do that. Jesus Christ.
That was so stupid.
I know. I don't. That's all. There's such a. That's why when you were just like, see, it's a can of worms. We can't talk about that without me getting frustrated because like. That's why when you were like, there's some stuff I like, I'm like, what? Like, which part of like Zack Snyder stuff that was good?
Yeah, I know.
Another thing I wanted to mention, I just didn't care for the action sequences in this movie.
Okay.
I think what I was going to say is like, okay, so some of the stuff that I really responded to was like the character moments in the action set pieces. Like I already said, when the Justice Gang does show up and Superman's on the ground and is telling them to be careful, or when Lex is having that final monologue and then he says, 1A, what? Like, I'm like, I was gripped because I felt emotionally connected with where those characters were at. And James Gunn is at his best with his action sequences when he balances the razzmatazz of like, look, it's a 361er with a pop song. But every time he does one of those like 361ers with a pop song, you always do feel like the action sequences are telling a story. I think the best example of it is probably Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad when she has her prison escape, where you feel like she's coming out as an individual when she escapes prison and kills all those people, because there's flowers exploding like visually from her side as she's shooting these people, and it's like this ballet move, and it feels so character focused and story focused. Where in this movie it just felt so. Well, first of all, when Superman is fighting people, even in Metropolis, there's like the CGI is like glaring to me. Like when he gets like tossed around, it's just like I know it's gonna be CGI, but it just didn't feel smooth to me. And on top of that, it just like I never felt like the action was telling a story. It felt like we stop, we're gonna have like a big moment of like Lex and Clark talking back and forth, and now we're gonna punch through walls, and now we're just gonna keep flying through. And there was not a single action sequence where I felt emotionally connected with the characters. I think that's a problem for a Superman movie,
Yeah, what's interesting is like my instinct is to push back, but the irony is I don't remember them well enough to even defend them. So
Yeah.
that might actually say something.
They're very forgettable.
Yeah, because I don't remember having a problem with them when I watched it. But the fact that, yeah, like I said, nothing in particular stuck with me. I was like, oh, that moment. I think the only moments that really stuck with me were when he fucks up all the soldiers in midair. I like that sequence when he like does that little 360 spin with his heat vision. I like some of that stuff when you just see Superman just going ham, you know?
Felt very video gamey to me, you know?
I mean, I kind of like that, but I guess for me, I interpret it as like this is him like just fully like unlocking himself and just going for it. At least that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, the camera going close to his like the Superman logo on his chest and then pulling back was a cool move too. I do like that.
Yeah, some of that stuff was was kind of fun. I also liked the kaiju scene too, for probably the same reasons though. I like the character moments between them of him swooping and saving them. But I did like the move of him flying all the way the fuck up in the air and then like dive bombing onto its head, you know?
That's true. Maybe there's a part of me that was like in those I saw those moments in the trailer and maybe that's my fault. So
fair enough,
I can accept that, but like I do feel like I want to walk out of these movies feeling like an electricity coming off my fingers with how excited I was. You know what I mean? And yeah, sure, you could say that's very high expectations, but the best superhero movies do that. Like when I'm watching,
and it's a Superman movie, it's supposed to be one of the most powerful beings in the universe,
you know, and so like even the Mr. Terrific scene, which is, you know, when Lois is in that force field looking at Mr. Terrific fuck up all those people. I like the whole move of like Mr. Terrific grabbing onto one of those balls that drags him to the other side. And that was cool. Like that was really cool, but nothing else. And I don't know, maybe for like, this movie is also like very much for kids too, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that pejoratively, but like, maybe for kids who see that, that's just like, Mr. Terrific's fucking awesome. Superman's fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. That's great. I'm not talking down to those people at all. But I think for me, having lived with so many of these movies for such a long time, I'm now at a place where I'm like, if you're not, you have to give me something else rather than just a pop song and like a oneer. Like I need something else, you know?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I wonder if, maybe because like, I think what you're getting at is, James Gunn is capable of more than that. And it feels like he kind of just showed up and it was kind of just like plateauing his abilities, even though he's doing a Superman movie. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, dude, you nailed it. That's exactly it. Because 2 action sequences I can name at the top of my head. Guardians 3, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, that hallway fight. We've seen 1 billion hallway fights now in movies. There is something about that scene that's electric, but you know why? Because they're all working together. It's the first time in the movie where you feel like, oh, the Guardians are finally connected again. Rocket's back. Rocket's been like MIA the entire movie, and he's finally back, you know? And then in Suicide Squad, when they're fighting the big starfish, and there's only a few members left of the Suicide Squad now, and Idris Elba has the entire movie, Bloodsport has been saying, I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. And at first they decide to just go the other way. Everyone's died, and like Bloodsport, Harley Quinn is like, let's just walk away. And Bloodsport decides to say, fuck you, I'm going to walk into it. And that's when Idris Elba starts being like, you go over there. You go over there. And then he looks at Polka Dot Man and he's like, that's your mother.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm saying it and I'm getting goosebumps. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's what James Gunn's able to do. Like I know he's better than this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I can get behind that. I need to absorb that one because like I said, when I first saw it, I wasn't thinking that. But now that you said it, I'm like, oh, I don't think you're wrong, you know?
And with Superman too, like I of course I have a high expectations for the action sequences. It's fucking Superman.
yeah, no, totally fair enough. Before we get to the write-in, do you want to throw out some shouties of stuff we haven't quite mentioned yet?
Love to. First shouty for me is Jimmy Olsen. I love Jimmy Olsen. Yeah. Jimmy Olsen's a very important character in Superman. He's like Clark's best friend, and like he's just that. The depiction of Jimmy Olsen in this movie is like, that's fucking perfect.
I know him being roped in with, Lex Luthor's girlfriend.
Yeah, which at first I was like, oh, what a disaster. James Gunn is doing the whole like selfie girl trope, which is like millennials take selfies. And then it was revealed that she's actually been undercover.
Yeah, this super espionage operation this whole time.
What's your shouty?
Crypto. We haven't talked about Crypto, but I really enjoyed Crypto. I like the idea of Crypto being a shitty dog.
Loved it. I thought that was great. I do think that there is a level to it where I was like, it was overused a little bit, because that moment that Superman has at the third act where he's like, Crypto, get that toy.
Mm-hmm.
You want that to hit harder. You want, like, again, I am saying this because I know James Gunn's like really good at that shit, which is like, like remember in Guardians 3 where the main villain is calling him by basically his prison name? And then Rocket finally cocks that gun and is just like, the name's Rocket Raccoon. And you're like, I'm like about to cry saying it, And so.
Yeah, I think like, I get what you're saying. I liked it. I personally did. I didn't think it, I wasn't putting it on quite that like pedestal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But like I said, I do get what you're saying. It's not as strong as other moments that James Gunn has done, but I did really like it.
I think I just have high expectations because I've seen him do it better in other movies, so maybe that's why I'm putting that
totally fair enough.
Unfair expectation.
Yeah, so shouty to Crypto. I know we touched on Lois Lane, but shouty to Lois Lane as well. I feel like you said, I thought she was great. I also like, especially I don't want to bring it up again, but compared to the last one, yeah, this is like the second coming.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like poor Amy Adams, she wasn't given a character.
I love Amy Adams too.
Yeah, that shot, another shouty. Speaking of Lois Lane, that shot of them kissing and them floating in the air at the end, I was like, you should have just ended the movie there. Like that should have been the final shot. That's like so great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of the upside down kiss in Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. I guess, we already touched on him already, but also shouted Mr. Terrific. I really like Mr. Terrific. He's it's like James Gunn had to really dig to find that character, I think, because I feel like he's such an unknown superhero.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I feel like he's super unknown.
Yeah, he was really cool. I want more of him. I'm really excited what they do for him. Despite my, misgivings about like, I hate the whole, like these characters are now going to show up in other movies. Mr. Terrific, I was excited about. I'm trying to like not forget anything. I love Metropolis and how it was depicted, this bright light city. Like, and yes. I love how a lot of the action sequences, besides the pocket universe bullshit, was in like broad daylight. I was like, oh, that's really cool,
Yeah, and even when it was at night, like when they were having that conversation, the one that we talked about earlier, of like maybe seeing the good in things as punk rock, how you see in the background that giant glowy monster and the Justice Gang's fighting it, and he's kind of just like, I'm off today.
Which I don't know if you remember, but the first image of Superman was him taking off his boots while that glowy thing was in the back, and people
I do remember that.
People clowned it, being like, why is Superman like just chilling while there's this whole thing behind it? And now we know he's just like, they took care of it. I was looking for. I love the fact that he's like, I was looking for Crypto, and she was like, didn't you say he's a bad dog? And he's like, yeah, but he's probably alone and he's scared.
Yeah. Oh, shouty to two things. One is how kryptonite affects him. I did like how they did kryptonite, where it's like visual and it like distorts his face. I feel like I don't normally see that. Usually it just makes him sweaty and, like all tired.
Yeah, this is like when it makes him feverish, where this one, it made him look sickly. It was solid.
Yeah.
And
then second shouty to, I forgot his name, I think it, but the elemental transformer dude, he was a very James Gunn character, but I actually did kind of like him.
It's Anthony Kerrigan. You know what else he played, right?
And I recognize the name, but I don't.
Chris, you're gonna love this. I'm so surprised you don't recognize him. He's it's me, Hank.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. I like how you say you're surprised at him. He's like covered head to toe in latex, like.
I heard that voice and I immediately knew.
Fair enough. I get that.
It's for people who don't know.
No, Hank.
Yeah, for people who don't know, that actor Anthony Kerrigan played a character on Barry, the show that Bill Hader had on HBO Max called on HBO. And he played a character named NoHo Hank, as in North Hollywood Hank. For for people who don't live
It's
in
a very
LA.
LA specific joke of a name.
Yeah,
Because
the
it's such
fact
a
that
lame part to be named after.
dude, I watched the pilot to Barry again, like literally last week. And the fact that it's so fucking funny when he's like, and we put the lipstick camera in the room. And he's
He
showing
opens and shows it, and he's like, you could have told him why you just wanted to show off your lipstick camera.
anyways. Okay, last shouty I'll give is the actual final shot, which is like, I want to see my parents and like the robots, Gary for whatever. Which, by the way, one of the robots is voiced by Michael Rooker, which is like, oh, awesome. Like James Gunn got him in. Alan Tudyk plays the robot that wants to be renamed Gary.
Of course. I feel like that guy's just required to lend his voice to everything at some point.
Well, they're like, oh, he likes to see like images of his parents. It calms him. And then you see like his life in Smallville. It is like and then you hear the song, I'm a punk rocker, yes I am. I'm like, and that's what I'm talking about. Like when James Gunn knows, like when he can hit that button so well. He knows what he's doing and he knows how to get you. And he knows how to fucking end a movie. He's the best at ending a movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. His endings are always iconic. His endings and his openings.
Yes. Yeah, man. I mean, so overall, I think you and I are so in the same boat about this movie. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. I know. I know. I did. When I saw it, I feel like I knew your thoughts on it when I watched it. I feel like you and I are so familiar with each other's tastes. I was like, oh, we're going to agree on most of this, I think.
So what's funny is I thought that you thought I would love it. You're like, oh, I was like, Chris probably thinks I fucking love this movie, but little does he know, I have some takes about what didn't work, and I'm more complex than what Chris thinks I am. I'm not just this guy that's just this hack that thinks anything sincere is good. Like, I was ready to be like, I'm gonna prove him wrong.
You were thwarted yet again by us agreeing.
Well, do you want to get to the write-in?
Yeah.
So we asked you guys, for people who are new here, at the end, at the end of each episode, we read out write-ins from our fans because we ask them how blank movie changed them. And they write us in at moviesthatchangedus@gmail.com. And if you want to know the next movie we're going to be doing and when you can write us in, you can subscribe to this channel. You can follow us on all our socials at Movies That Changed Us. We're on TikTok, Instagram, all that shiz, and also Patreon.
So we asked you guys like what Superman as a character means to you. Normally we ask the movie specifically, but in this case we asked a broader question because we didn't know how many people will have seen the movie by the time we put the prompt out. So this one's by our boy, Daniel Walsh. And Daniel Walsh is always going to be our boy now. For those who don't know, in case you didn't know that, he is. He says, "Hey, nice dudes. I want to start this one off by saying that Superman is one of the most important superheroes to me. Same as a lot of people. I first heard of him from cartoons that were before my time, like 2002's Justice League," which, by the way, I love that he says before my time. I always forget how young you are, Daniel. I was probably like 8 years old when Justice League came out.
I know.
Even though Batman was and still is my favorite of the bunch, I knew Superman was the most crucial character. It wasn't until a little later that I saw the Christopher Reeves movie, and that has since become one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Superman inspires me more than any other superhero to simply want to help anyone that I possibly can. To me, he is way more than just the strong man who flies, and he is the ultimate symbol of hope. I know all of that sounds like a cliche to say, but it's just true. I always hated it when people say Superman is boring because he is one of the coolest superheroes to exist, and he's the blueprint for everyone else to have come after him. He isn't my favorite, but in my opinion, he is the greatest superhero of all time. That's about it, so see you next time, nice dudes. This has been your boy, Dan.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think, like I said earlier, I'm tired of people being bored by Superman because I feel like we've had a lot. I mean, Superman's one of the most reinterpreted superheroes out there, right? Like we've seen a cajillion different versions of him in comic books and movies ever since like the 40s or whenever Superman is first becoming a thing.
Yeah.
But so I think though, like anything, there are more compelling versions of Superman than others. And I feel like it paints a very incomplete picture when people say things like Superman's boring. Because yeah, he does hold a lot more. Like you and I have gotten into a full discussion about it, of like the things that he stands for are really what makes Superman compelling.
Again, it's like what Pa Kent, it's like it said, it's the choices, your actions that make you who you are. He's a god amongst men. He chooses to be human. you know?
Mm-hmm.
Something that we didn't really, something that I wanted to talk about that I forgot until we read Dan's write-in, was something that's interesting about Superman interpretations and superhero movies is that I feel like most of the time they reflect where we are as society. So like Dark Knight comes out, it kind of changes the game for a lot of superhero movies to become a little bit more nihilistic, a little bit more dark and gritty.
Mm-hmm.
Snyder comes in and is really diving deep into that. And like anything, you say a lot of the times off mic and on mic that the pendulum swings. Like when you get a lot of one thing, you'll go back another way. A thing that I've been aching for is this kind of tone that James Gunn did. And even though I think this movie has flaws, I respect that it's going for that. But
Yeah.
I don't think that like the tone of the movie is always going to reflect the time period we're living in. It actually does. A lot of movies do a lot of superhero movies actually do the opposite. And I feel like we're in a world that is deeply cynical and nihilistic, and it only makes sense for Superman Superman movie to go the other way. You know what I mean?
It's like him fighting that that belief.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's where these movies can actually do good. I mean, we can talk people love to talk all day about how superhero movies are killing cinema or how superhero movies aren't cinema. And sure, some of them just aren't. Some of them are what Scorsese says, which is amusement park rides, right? But the best of them do this, which is like open up your worldview through characters you can look up to.
Yeah.
That's
well said.
Right? So I love Superman, and I love that James Gunn is trying to go for that.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself, dude.
Well, join us over on our Patreon at Movies That Changed Us to see me guess the movie Vehicle. I'm really excited.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. We really appreciate it. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.